Hey, Aubrey, how you doing today?
Great. I have a question for you, Lindsay.
Okay.
When's the last time you were packed like sardines somewhere?
Oh my gosh, I remember living in Tokyo. I remember a couple of times when I made the mistake of getting on the train at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m.
Rush hour.
and I never did it again
Oh,
because I just couldn't believe it. How packed I was and how they just pack you in. They have people that push people all the way in, and it seems to work in Japanese society.
yeah. I had the same experience in Italy. I got on a train once in Italy and we were packed like sardines. Everyone was going to work and they're just like, get used to not having personal space because we all need to fit on this train.
Well, I will say that Americans do have we might be the high maintenance ones around the world when it comes to personal space, Aubrey. Don't you
It's
think?
true, right? The
Yeah.
subway of New York City, even when it's pretty crowded, you're still not really touching anyone. Like no
Yeah.
one's going to get on if it's that crowded.
Right, right. We just need space. We have a
Hmm.
bubble that's probably much larger than most people's bubbles around the
Right.
world. I've noticed that in
Yes.
airports. I've mentioned before.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Egypt or Argentina in the last couple of years where I was getting my bags at the airport and someone just came like right across me and grabbed his bag and I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Whoa. You're really moving into my space." You know.
Right, just, like, brushing right across you. You're like,
Mhm.
"Hey, here's my bubble. You're
Yeah.
in it."
Yeah, really interesting.
It's
But
funny.
we're yeah, so why are we talking about sardines, by the way?
Yeah, we got this great question, and we're going to teach a couple of idioms today that our listener asked about. So you wanna read the question for us, Lindsay?
Yes, this is from Baruz, and Baruz says, I'm just wondering about idioms. I know many idioms. Actually, many of us don't understand their meaning. For instance, packed like sardines. Who asked you? Bring home the bacon? So what do you think is what this listener is asking, right?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I love how, like, this listener is saying, "I know a ton of idioms. I hear all of these idioms, but I don't always know exactly what they mean. I'm not always sure exactly how to use them."
Mhm.
And we talked recently about, learning the background of slang. It goes same goes with idioms. When you know where something comes from, the background of it, what it's referring to, it's easier to remember and use.
Yeah, we've been talking about idioms and slang a lot in the last few weeks. So, this is the place to be to learn natural, real English. Aubrey, before we get into this question and answer it for our listener Baruz, I want to shout out to our listeners who left us a review. Wherever you're listening, guys, we would love to read your review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iOS or Android app. So thank you to Matias Mayor, who left us a 5-star review, by the way, Aubrey. It was a good one.
Amazing. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the review. We read these reviews, guys. We're so grateful for them. So, yes, wherever you listen, leave us a review.
Yeah, perfect. Guys, leave us that review. So, Aubrey, what else do we need to know here to get us started today?
Yeah. So Baruz asked about packed like sardines, who asked you, and bring home the bacon. And so we're going to do a part two follow up about
Okay.
the phrase who asked you
Yeah.
and other phrases that can come off as very rude
Right.
because this question, you have to be careful. It can sound very rude. And there are
Yes.
similar questions that you also want to be careful with. So hit follow. We're going to do a part two about that very soon.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one belongs in a different category, right? For
Yeah.
another day, another episode for another day. But yeah, like you said, hit that follow button. You don't want to miss a single episode of All Ears English. So let's go right to packed like sardines. All right.
Yeah. So what are sardines, Lindsay? Do you eat sardines?
I actually try to eat sardines because they're so healthy.
Oh, funny.
It's more like I buy them and then I look at the can for 2 or 3 weeks. When I get good sardines, they're great. Like in good olive oil from Portugal, for example, really
Gotcha.
good.
So,
But
guys, this is a little tin. It's usually like a rectangular shaped. You
yes,
may eat these in your culture. You may be familiar with these. You kind of open the top of this middle little aluminum tin, and they're these tiny little fish that are packed in really tight in
yes,
like oil and salt and flavor, whatever. My dad would eat them all the time. He loved sardines.
they're super healthy. Super
That's so
healthy.
funny. But
So
that's
I
where we get this expression from because
yeah.
the little sardines are packed so tightly into these little tins.
Mhm.
And so when we say packed like sardines, it means crowded, but like really people are pressed in tightly, right?
Right.
So you wouldn't say it for like traffic, for example. If there's a lot of cars and there's a lot of traffic on the road, it wouldn't
Oh,
be
that's a
like
good point.
these cars are packed like sardines. It has to be, it's like physical proximity where things are pressing next to each other, really.
That's a good point. It's people, right? Mostly
Yeah,
people.
we really just use it for
The
people.
human body. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So that's a subtle point to understand for our listeners. It's not about a traffic jam. It's not about
Right.
like other structures being packed like sardines. It's people being
It's
packed like sardines.
people in a confined space where you're, like,
Mhm.
more close to other people than you'd wanna be like, "Oh, we were packed like sardines." This will happen often
Mm.
in concerts, right? Or at sports
Yes.
arenas where you just end up really crowded in close. Did you ever play the, childhood game Sardines? It's like an outdoor game.
Sounds
Have you played
so
that?
familiar. Yeah, it sounds really familiar, but I
We
can't
played
remember
it
how to
all the
play it.
time. It's very similar to hide and seek, but
Okay.
instead of everyone hiding and then one person finds them all,
Mhm.
one person hides and then everyone finds them, and when they find them, they hide with them. So they end
Oh,
up
yeah.
all
Yeah, yeah,
packed
yeah.
into this tiny space trying to hide
Right.
together, so that's why they call it
Yeah.
sardines. It's so fun.
Yes, we played that game, so fun. S and
Yes.
that's a great example to help us envision, Aubrey, what this
Mhm.
expression means. I
Yeah.
definitely remember leaving the once I went to see Serena and Venus Williams play each other at, Flushing Meadows in New York at the US Open,
Oh,
and
wow.
I remember walking out of that and feeling a little scared of how packed I was and how there didn't seem to be any proper exits. You can
Yes.
sort of have a panic attack at times if you're in the
Right?
wrong
When you
place and
feel
you're
like you
like,
can't
"What if
get
something
out.
happened here? This is not, the safest setup right now."
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Something similar
Mhm.
happened to me. We were leaving Boston after the fireworks after 4th of July, and we were all
Mm.
having to funnel to this little, like, bridge to get to our cars. So we were all packed in, kind of just trying to get over there. I remember someone said in
Yeah.
French, they were like, "Oh, I can't believe people with their strollers," or something like that. I was there with my
Yeah.
stroller, and I spoke French, so I responded in French and was like, "But sorry, but
I love when that
I don't think I
happens.
should have to stay home," or whatever. They were so surprised that I spoke French. It was
They were
funny.
probably shocked. Yes.
Yeah, like, "Oh."
Yeah. Yeah. No,
We
that
wouldn't
makes
have said
sense.
anything mean about your stroller if we knew you spoke French.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, the
Funny.
Boston was it the Boston Pops that you saw?
Yes, the
Yeah,
Boston
that
Pops were,
draws a
like,
crowd.
playing, and then with
Yeah.
the fireworks, it was
Yes.
amazing, but
Mhm.
leaving a fireworks display is always tough. It's always crowded.
I think anytime we go into a scenario like this, like Boston Pops or a sports game where we know there's gonna be it's a different mindset we have to get into in a way,
Right? You just
right?
have to be patient.
Mhm,
It's gonna take
mhm.
a while to get out, and we just have to be okay with it.
Yeah, it's true. So, do we have any other examples here that we wanna share?
Yeah, let's share a couple examples where you might say packed like sardines just in a regular conversation. You might say, "We're packed like sardines in here. I can barely breathe." Right? So that
Yes.
could be just any space where there are a lot of people really in
Mhm.
tight.
Yes. Or the kids were packed like sardines in the classroom. That school really needs smaller class sizes. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah,
Yeah,
not
and
good.
this is a situation where, like, the kids probably aren't, like, standing all shoved in there, but it's, like, too
Right.
many kids, desks
Mhm.
crammed in, that kind of
Mhm.
you could still say they're packed like sardines. There's not enough space for everyone in that room.
Love it. All right. So I think our listeners have a clear picture of what that feels like, what that's like, packed like sardines. What's our second one? Still on the theme of food here,
Yeah,
Aubrey.
right? Yeah, Marius asked about bring home the bacon. So
Uh-huh.
this means earn money or succeed financially. And I wanted to look up the origin because I was not clear. I'm like, okay, why
Hmm.
why are we talking about bacon when we're talking about making money, right?
Yeah,
So
interesting.
what I found, the most people believe the origin of it was from 1906
Hmm.
when the mother of an American boxer named Joe Gans used this to encourage her son about the fight. She was telling him like, bring home the bacon, meaning that he would win. And so, but then as I looked at, there's several different theories. Like some people believe it started in medieval England. So this is one of those
Oh.
where like people aren't sure exactly where it originated.
Interesting. Okay. We don't know exactly. It could have originated from medieval England or
Where
other
bacon was like a
place.
highly prized commodity.
Oh, yeah.
So there were like
Mhm.
sayings involving bacon. It might have also been from there was like these competitions where someone would receive a side of bacon, like a chunk of bacon as the award,
Oh,
also in 12th century England.
interesting.
So there are all kinds of different there in history, bacon has been like an award or like a
Yeah.
prize. And so this
Oh,
might be where that came from.
okay. Or British, you said British fairground games is something you put in our notes here,
Yes,
where they
this is
would come
another place
home.
it might have come from.
Interesting. So there are a lot of candidates, a lot of options, a lot of potential places, but the most important thing is to understand what it means, right? Which again, it means earning money or succeeding financially, especially in the context of your home in a way, right? It's really in the context of your home.
Right,
Um,
exactly. So if you get a job that, pays well, you might be like, "Oh, I'm so excited I can bring home the bacon."
yeah.
Right? Or like, we use it very informally to
Mm.
mean like I am now making a paycheck, like you said, Lindsay, that I can bring home to
Yes.
support myself and my family.
Right. And this is such a connection skill, Aubrey. Why would we say that this is a connection skill for our listeners to know this slang and then to build it out?
Yeah. Well, especially because there in many cultures, there's currently a cultural shift about who brings home the bacon.
Mhm.
Traditionally, in a lot of cultures, men would like go and get a job and bring home the bacon. But in a lot of cultures now, more and more women are working full time and these traditional roles are switching. So this is a really interesting thing to talk about, to find out in someone's culture what this is like, what are these gender roles like, and are they changing?
Oh my gosh, yes. There was a really, really good episode of The Daily about this. And it was linked to the elect at this point, we've had the election in the
Mm.
US by the time this comes out, but it was linked to the election and how this is supposed to be. We're anticipating that it will be a real gender split, more so than
Mm.
education, more so than any other demographic. Talking about how things have changed and how women in the 90s growing up were girls were very empowered. You can do anything, you can do it. And of course they're getting jobs, they're making money, they're succeeding often more so than their spouses in many cases. And it's a sense of like there's nothing left for men in a lot of ways. Um,
Interesting.
and so not of course not entirely, but it's a trend that's happening. And so I
Right.
would encourage our listeners to go and check out that episode.
Yeah, definitely. We want to teach you a couple of phrases that you can use to start this conversation because it is an
Mhm.
interesting conversation to have. And you can use this idiom, bring home the bacon, when you start it. So, for example, you could say, gender roles seem to be shifting, and anyone could bring home the bacon for a family nowadays. What do you think of that? So, you're asking a pretty general, open ended question about, like, what do you think about shifting gender roles?
Yeah, this could lead to some really good conversation. It could be very cultural. It could become quite deep and maybe
Yeah.
heated. Super interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Or you could say, my dad was the one who would bring home the bacon. What about you?
Yeah.
Something similar came up I was teaching a class of girls in Turkey for Be
Mhm.
the Voice of Girls. And we ended up talking about this. It was really interesting talking about the differences between US culture and the culture that they come from. What are the
Mhm.
traditional roles? Is this shifting? And it became a very full and interesting conversation because this is a great connection topic.
Oh, huge. I'm glad you had a great conversation there. I also think it's interesting because often when we talk about money, it can get a little sensitive. And it's one of the things that we try to avoid talking about in American culture, right? Money, sex, politics, religion are things that we avoid talking about, right, in
Yeah.
public conversation. And so we like to use an idiom to kind of dance around the topic a little bit. So bring home the bacon feels a little less direct than my dad would make all the money, right?
Right, exactly. My dad was the
Mm-hmm.
one who was working. My dad brought home the paycheck. All of these other
Mm-hmm.
ways it's true. Then you're directly talking about money. So we avoid that by using this idiom.
Interesting. Okay, Aubrey, let's get into a role play here. So, we are friends meeting up for a coffee. All right.
Yeah. You want to
Okay.
start us?
Yes. Wow, we're packed like sardines in here.
Yeah, these tables do seem very close together. I have to be careful not to bump the lady behind me.
I understand them wanting to fit more people in, but a little breathing room would be nice.
Yeah, seriously.
Hey, how's the job hunt going?
Not bad. I'm enjoying a few weeks off, actually. It's kind of nice not having to bring home the bacon.
I can imagine. I could use a vacation.
Nice.
That's true, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Always.
Yes. All right, Aubrey. So I started by saying, wow, we're packed like sardines in here. So we're clearly at a coffee shop where, like it's
The
very
table
crowded,
really close. Have you ever
right?
had this experience where they're trying to fit in extra tables, so they're sort of just a little too close together, like you can't back up your chair without running into somebody else?
Yes, yes,
Tricky.
100%, 100%.
Especially in New York
Mhm.
City, they're like small places and they're cramming in all the tables they can.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, that happens. And then you said, Aubrey, what'd you say? You
And I
said
was
what?
saying, this is an interesting way to use this too, where I'm saying like, I'm out of work, I'm interviewing, but it's kind of nice to have a couple weeks off and not have to be the one bringing home the bacon, right?
Mhm.
So if we're thinking about if you're the one supporting a family, it's like, okay, this
Mhm.
pressure is off me, at
Yeah.
least for a couple of weeks. I'm not worried
Mhm.
about bringing home that check.
Yeah, and again, using that idiom when you're talking about money and look for other situations, guys, where we might do that. We might replace
Hmm.
kind of a potentially controversial or private topic with an idiom. See if you can
We
find
do that
more
a lot.
scenarios. Yeah, yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want to share. We just very recently, if you scroll up, 2313, we were teaching that slang, how to learn English slang at warp speed. We were also giving the background for these slang phrases because this is such a great way to learn slang and idioms, to learn a little bit about the background. Where is this from? It's really going to help you add it to your active vocabulary so you can bring it to mind when you're having conversations.
Yes, love it. And for our takeaway today, guys, we want to encourage you. We're giving you today not only a couple of great idioms, but most importantly, a really great conversation topic to strike up a conversation with really anyone, that you want to connect with, that you want to go beyond the surface level. Right, Aubrey?
Absolutely. What's one of the best things to ask about, to connect about cultural shifts that you are noticing and find out if it's the same where they live? This is very interesting.
I love it. So use these expressions, start those conversations. And again, Aubrey, when our listeners are going for these conversations, connection, not perfection. Focus on that. Try to understand the person and their culture. That's the goal. It's not reflecting on yourself and did I make a mistake? Was that vocabulary wrong? Get out of your head and go to the other person, right?
Absolutely, right? It's not a question of who's right, who's wrong, which culture's doing it better. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're observing. We're interested. We want to know what we have in common with others, and we're just curious about how the world is changing.
Yeah, and just don't focus on making mistakes within your language, right? Just
Yeah,
learn get it's a fact-finding mission, trying to understand
absolutely.
what that person's experience is in the world. All right? Good. All right, Aubrey, you have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. You too. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.